Right. So being flexible, flexi work, that word flexibility, a very important word naturally within most of the work we do within the HR industry. And naturally, it's the future of work in many ways when we talk about that word. But the thing is, how do we make it work? It's quite easy to say it, it's quite easy to think about it, but actually making it work is a completely different thing indeed. So our next session really is all about understanding what you really need to ensure the success of the future of work strategy. Really pleased and delighted to invite to our virtual extravaganza here in HR Week 2021, founder of Ignite Coaching, Nicola Pease. Nicola, I can feel you coming through.
Am I live? I can't see myself.
You are live, yeah. I can see. Yeah. We can see you. We can hear you.
Fantastic.
We can feel you're there. We can see your lovely smile, and we're ready to hear what you have to say. Remember, at the end, we'll have some questions from our listeners. I'll pop back in and ask you a couple of questions regarding what you've just said. So, in the meantime, Nicola, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. So as you said, I'm Nicola Pease. I am founder of Ignite Coaching and Consulting, and I'm here to talk to you about how to make flexible working work for your business and your people. I thought, first of all, I should probably put it into a bit of context. So why am I here and why am I qualified to tell you and talk to you about flexible working? So this is my very squiggly career to date. So I, fairly early on in my HR career, I was appointed to a HR director role. So I had a very fast track kind of career development, and I was appointed a HR director of a UK company called Enterprise PLC. They do outsourced maintenance services. So think your highways, contract maintenance, utilities maintenance, that kind of thing is what they did. And I had a very quick kind of graduate traineeship program with them. And after almost 10 years of being there, was then appointed as a HR director. From there, I moved into Jaguar Land Rover, where I took on a global head of HR role. So I was then responsible for HR teams around the world. And there we did a lot of organizational transformation. We did lots on employee engagement, organizational effectiveness, and organization development. So thinking about how we could engage and develop our people in different parts of the world. I then took on my most important role to date, which is I became a mum. So for those of you out there who are also parents, I'm sure that this next step might resonate with you. So I have two boys who are now 5 and 3, called Henry and Archer. And they changed my world completely. So they completely threw everything upside down for me. Prior to having them, I was very career driven. I wanted to get to the top, be an executive director of HR. That was my kind of goal in life. And suddenly I found myself in a situation where in order to achieve that goal, I would have to sacrifice the time that I wanted to spend with my 2 young children. And I just wasn't prepared to do that. And it sparked this fire in me, which is why my business is now called Ignite, about it shouldn't have to be a choice. Flexibility should be the norm. Flexibility should be there for everyone. Because whether you're a parent or a carer, or whether you have a condition that means you can't work full-time hours, whatever reason it is, we all have lives outside of work. And wouldn't it be great if we could all work in a way that suits our lives instead of having to adapt our lives to suit our work? And this is what founded me and set me off on my mission to change the world of work one business at a time. And that's what I now do. That's what I've been doing now for the last couple of years. So when we talk about flex, what am I even talking about when I talk about flex? I'm talking about the where, when, and how we work. There's been a lot, especially over the course of the pandemic in the last 18 months, around flexibility being about where we work. So it's about remote working or it's about office working. And yes, that is an element of flexibility, but it's just one part of flexibility. To get true flexibility, you really need to be thinking about the when, where, and the how. So the where can be everything from fully remote to fully in the office. It might be frontline facing roles. It could be customer facing roles. It could be hybrid, which is this new blended way of working that certainly in the UK we're all talking about, which is spending part of your time in the office and part of your time remotely at home or elsewhere. But flexibility is also about the when we work. So do we work full-time hours? Do we work part-time hours? Are we working shift patterns or compressed hours? Maybe there's flexibility of when those hours are. So no longer are we in a kind of industrial revolution style era where it's about working 9 to 5. What we found certainly during the course of the pandemic is that people were working a few hours in the morning, taking a break, a few hours in the afternoon, taking a break, a few hours in the evening, and really working around, in some cases, when they were able to work, particularly if they had children at home and were homeschooling, but also around when people found themselves to be most productive. We are not all productive or at our best between the hours of 9 to 5. Some people are early birds, some people are night owls, and some people are everything else in between. And actually having the flexibility to work when you are most effective is how you enable a lot of flexibility. But finally, the most important part of kind of what we mean by flex is the how. So if you're going to achieve the where and the when successfully, you need to be thinking about how work is organised. How is work carried out? So are we thinking about inputs or are we thinking about outputs? Is it time-based? Do you need to be customer-facing at a certain time of the day? If you work in retail, for example, shops are open at certain times of day and therefore you need to be there and physically present for those customers. Are we talking about collaborative work or individual work? Or are we talking about asynchronous working, or are we talking about synchronous working? So when are the moments when we need to come together collectively, and when are the moments when we need to be at a point in time together? And that's what I mean by flexible working. But I think so much has changed in this space in the last kind of over the course of the pandemic in the last 18 months that I just wanted to touch on that briefly. So in the last 18 months, I've carried out a series of research projects to really understand and kind of get under the skin of what is flexible working, how do you make it work, how can it benefit employers as well as employees? Because I think if you are going to make flexible working work, as we'll come on to, it's about finding that sweet spot between what the employee wants and what the organisation wants. So what we found has changed in the last kind of 18 months or so is that on the left-hand side is the research we did with organisations, with businesses and companies that had adopted flexible working as a result of the pandemic, and what were the outcomes that they were seeing as a result of that. And we called it the 5 Reasons Why Flex Works project. And what we discovered with those organisations was that it actually had improved performance. So people were more productive at team level, and even at company level had improved by 41% for some companies. It supported employee well-being, so it allowed people to have that mental health breaks during the day. Now, more on that later, because as the pandemic has gone on, that's sort of got worse. But there was a lot more support, a lot more employer-led initiatives when it came to well-being during the course of the pandemic, to the benefit of employees. And employees and businesses were really seeing the difference that made in terms of people's morale, in terms of people's engagement, and in terms of people's health and well-being. Companies reported that it actually improved collaboration. So I think one of the things that is often kind of bandied about with flexible working is that it can stop collaboration because you're not all together in the same place at the same time. But actually the technology has allowed us to collaborate in a different kind of way. And it's meant that we've moved away from having meetings for meeting's sake to collaborating asynchronously, to using the tools and technology that's available, and to being more planful about when and where we're going to get together. It's opened up a whole talent pool for organisations, and it's kind of been a bit of an epiphany for some of the organisations we were working with that suddenly found that those critical roles that they'd been trying to fill for a long time, but hadn't because of the location that they were based in, were suddenly able to recruit people from across the country or across the world even into those roles. And it just opened up this world of talent that said, actually, I don't need someone to be able to commute to an office on a daily basis to carry out this role. And it created a whole host of opportunities for them there from a talent attraction perspective. And finally, most importantly, in my view, is it's created this culture of trust. So previously in the pandemic, a lot a lot of what I heard from leaders and from executives was, it'll never work. We can't trust our people. If they're at home, they won't actually be working. And the pandemic has actually just smashed that mindset completely and said, it's not, we can trust our employees. People will get on with their work when left to it. When we empower our people and we trust them to get on with it, they will deliver. And that was the kind of the things that came out of the pandemic from the flexible working from a business perspective. But from an employee perspective, I also carried out some research called I Want Flex, which was trying to understand all of the reasons why individuals and employees want more flexibility. Because I think historically, it has been associated with women and generally mothers or carers who need that flexibility when their children are young or when they have children. But actually, what it's uncovered and what the pandemic helped people to realise is we all want flexibility in one way, shape or form for hundreds of different reasons. So it might be that we are a parent. It could be that we have pets we want to, take out for a walk in the middle of the day. It could be that people are neurodiverse or people have a disability. It could be that people are caring for elderly relatives. Or it could be that people have another interest outside of work. So there was one person I was talking to last year who's a triathlete. And what she said was working flexibly had allowed her to train to be part of the Great British team. And that flexibility of having the life that we want whilst doing the work that we love is what really makes flexibility work for both an employee and an employer perspective. And I guess I've kind of given the game away slightly, but how you make flexible working work is by finding that sweet spot in the middle between what the organisation needs. So what does the organisation need to thrive, to be successful, to meet its customer demand, to deliver the impact it's trying to do, to give to the world? And what do your employees need in order to feel trusted and empowered to get on with the work that you are giving them to kind of achieve those goals? And where you find those two in the middle, that's where you can find that flexibility works. And I've worked with lots of organizations over the course of the last 2 years to try and unpick that. And how do you make that work? How do you find it? And then once you have found what type of flexibility it is that you're looking for, which is what this will determine for you, it's then thinking about from a holistic organizational perspective, how do you then implement that? How do you make that work for the longer term? So one thing to mention right now is obviously flexible working is new for a lot of people. It is the future of working. I genuinely believe it's the future of working, and I'm super excited that that's going to happen. But no one is going to get it right first time round. And so how do you kind of continually evolve your strategy when it comes to flexible working? And from a HR and a people perspective, what do you need to have in place to support that and continue to iterate it? So I've developed a framework that's been based on my research and my experience with organizations to implement flexible working. And it can be used as almost like an audit and a diagnostic process that you can do as regularly or as infrequently as you wanted to really understand and kind of unpick the areas where are we now and where do we want to be? And then you can work on that kind of change management program and put in place your people strategy tactics to get to where you want to be. So there's four main areas of the Flex framework, and I'll just give you a brief outline of it now. So the flexible framework is based on structure, performance, culture, and engagement, with your strategy being at the heart of it. And I'll just briefly touch on each of these because I'm conscious of time. So in terms of structure, this is thinking about your people, processes, and systems. So when I say this, I mean your people processes and your people structures, your people systems. So for example, when you're thinking about organization design, is your process for organization design actually defaulting to a certain type of working in a certain type of way? So do you default to all positions are full-time, for example? Do you default to all positions must be customer facing, for example? And then how does that flow through to your policies and your ways of, say, recruiting for people, for developing people, for performance managing people? And so this element of the structure is really looking at, I guess, the nuts and bolts of your kind of HR processes, peoples and systems. What's the setup there? Are things set up in a way that are going to support your flexible working strategy, or are they going to cause workarounds or longer term issues when it comes to flexible working? So, for example, you might think about talent development processes in this way, and you would think, well, what is our current process? Does it tend to lean itself towards people who aren't working flexibly, are the ones who are promoted, are the ones who are recognised, etc. So that's the structure part of it. Then coming on to performance. So this is thinking about at business level, what are the KPIs or the OKRs of your business? What are the key objectives of your business? And how does that flow through the business to a team and individual level? And it's in this part of the circle, really, or of the framework, where your managers become critical in ensuring that flexibility works. They become that layer that interprets what is flexible working. And we all know that what gets measured gets managed. And so what are they measuring? What is their mindset around performance and development? Is their mindset about presenteeism? Is it about inputs, or is it about outputs and deliverables? How can you support them to measure against those milestones instead of measuring what we've always measured, which is, oh, he does a good job, I see him over there in the office, he's always really busy. How do you support that when people are dispersed across an organization? You might not see them that often. People are working in different hours and working in different times. And under here as well, we'd look at your reward and recognition strategies. So again, how are you rewarding people? What is the reward mechanisms that you have within your organization? And not just necessarily your pay structure here. This could be, the bonus structure. It could be how you are doing employee recognition activities. Does that tend to favor people who are working less flexibly? Or is it actually inclusive? How can you do it in an inclusive way for your flexible teams? Moving along then to engagement, that's thinking about communication, well-being, and employee voice. So this is looking at the ways in which we communicate with our people. Are we doing it in a way that is still set up in an assumption that says people are generally at their desks, generally during this time of the day, and we're going to send them an email? Similarly, it might here be about streamlining communication. When are we communicating? Why are we communicating? Through which mechanism are we communicating? One of the downsides of what's happened over the last kind of 18 months is the amount of new technology that's come into place can become overwhelming. You've got Slack channels, you've got Teams channels, you've got emails, you've got video conferences, you've got a whole host of ways we're now contacting people and communicating with people. And it can feel a little overwhelming. And sometimes what I did for one organization is just stripping that back. So what are each of those methods of communications for? And how can we get the best out of them so that people understand? If I want to have a chat, I go into the Slack channel. If I company messages are communicated via email. So it's a one-way kind of top-down stream of communication, as an example. Here, you also want to be thinking about employee well-being. So what are the initiatives? What are the support frameworks you have in place that are going to help people to ensure that they are feeling supported, that we're keeping an eye on people's mental and physical well-being? So one of the things that we found, again, as the pandemic has gone on, is this remote burnout, is this feeling of needing to be always on, and the lack of boundaries between home and work means that people are working longer hours, are giving more, and it's causing them to burn out. And so in this space, we're looking at what are the watch outs, what are the things we can put in place to prevent that kind of thing from happening, and what support can we give our employees in that space. And finally, importantly, in this section is about employee voice. And this is going back to, we won't get it right first time round. So how can we ensure that we're continually listening to our employees and they are helping us to shape how this can look for the future? And the last part of the framework is around culture. So this is about your vision, values, and leadership. It's the thing that will make your flexible strategy work or not work. But what I'm not suggesting here is that you would rewrite your values, that you would redo the company vision. It's about looking at the vision and the values that you have through the lens of flexible working. And again, kind of unpicking that. Is it an inclusive set of values and vision, or was it set up for us when we worked in a way that meant that everybody came to an office and did the same thing at the same time? And under here, importantly, is leadership. So this is where you can support your leaders to look at themselves, to reflect on the leadership shadow that they are casting across the organization. one of the things that I'm finding from a few companies is that there's this gap between how leadership view flexibility and how more junior members of staff view flexibility. And that's often around their own preconception and their own preconceived ideas or their own experiences. So, for example, at leadership level, people are much more likely to be comfortable working from home because they don't need to prove themselves to anyone. They're not trying to be visible to more senior members of the organization. Whereas more junior members of staff feel like they need to prove themselves. They're wanting to be visible. They're wanting to be developed. And similarly, the setup and the environment that people have is different. So at leadership level, it's tended to be that they have a home setup, they have a home office space that they can use. And that's not always the case for people who are in more junior positions, who are maybe new graduates who haven't got that home setup. And so what this framework does is it just gives you a really clear guideline on, in each of these areas, where are the key areas that we need to work on? Where might we be falling behind? What might be the area that we want to focus on in order to make flexible working work? And it really sets you up for, you can then revisit this again and again and again to go, okay, we focused on performance management last time, but actually we've found that communication has dipped. So let's dig into that and let's look at communication. And that's what this framework is there to do. I'm sure that I'm probably running out of time, so I will say that I am over in the expo area. Please do come along and have a chat with us if you'd like to get in contact. And I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you.
Nicola, fantastic. As Nicola said, if you're curious, you'd like to know more, it's a topic certainly you want to expand and find some more ideas about. I'm sure, you can visit Nicola over on our booth. I'm sure you can link up with her on LinkedIn as well. I'm sure she'll be happy to hear anybody that's been listening to her speech and found it useful to contact with her as well. But really, certainly for me, listening as you were speaking, Nicola, almost like a kind of guide, a kind of nice flavor of really what this is all about. So thank you so much. All that I will say now is thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and I don't know, hopefully maybe we'll see you again in the future. So thank you so much, Nicola.
Thank you.
Beautiful, great. Okay, so we put that aside now, and what we'll do now, we'll take a short break, but at 1:15, again, it's time for you to choose. Lots of choosing today and every day, because there's so much to choose from. You want to make sure you're getting the best out of the week you can that's relevant for you. But the next session at 1:15 are the 4 case studies. Once again, 4 different case studies. You need to choose which case study you would like to go for. I will be here at track A with the case study A right here in this area, and you just choose exactly which one you want to go for. But before we leave, just remember, again, this event is for you naturally, and we want you to get involved. We want you to share your perspective. We want you to see and do as much as you can. There's so much here to grab onto, to grab and take away. It's really amazing. Again, you've got the HR Expo Zone, the networking sessions as well, the case studies that are coming up, the speakers as well, the booths, the library, HR library with podcasts, books, articles, blog posts, all the things that each speaker has got to share with you in terms of what their ideas are as well. So, and the great thing is, we actually reward you by doing this. So basically, it's almost like a gamified, personalized format here. So the more you get engaged, the more you do, we give you credits. For example, here on the main stage, you ask a question, we give you credits. What a great world where we give you credits. You're rewarded for asking questions. We also have polls. You answer a poll, we give you credits. You download material, you share your perspective. All these things add up to different credits. And once you get 100 credits, we reward you with a masterclass. It cannot be more simpler. It cannot be even more rewarding. What a great way. What a great way to live your life. That's exactly what we're doing here all throughout the week. So explore, enjoy, and we'll meet you back here at 1:15.